I want to welcome you to one of our evening programs. This is the TRVI, the Therapeutic Recreation Virtual Institute for PRPS. My name is Dan Hendy. I'm the education manager here, and it's my pleasure to bring you our presentation tonight, Finding Your Superpowers in Difficult Times with Vicki Pittner, CTRS, and also owner operator of My Leisure Coach. I'm going to go ahead and advance the slide here. As you know, this is a Zoom meeting and participants have the ability to unmute themselves and speak. When you're not speaking, can you please mute yourself, as this will minimize the background noise. Please use the chat box to ask questions or alert us of concerns if you're having some with the presentation. And for this session, you're going to need two 12 by 12 sheets of aluminum foil, some tape, and an index card. So you have time to get that. That'll be great because you're going to become a superhero. Okay. This session's approved for 1.5 hours NCTRC credit or 0.1 CEU. At the end of the program, that link to a SurveyMonkey evaluation will appear. You'll complete the evaluation and enter the code phrase to get awarded the credit. At the end of the RVI, I'll send a summary to each and every one of you of your credits earned. Okay, so without further ado, I am going to release my screen. I'm going to introduce Vicki. She has been using the expressive arts for over 40 years in clinical and community settings to promote creative healing. Her mission is to improve and enrich the biopsychological, social, and physical functioning of those living with depression, anxiety, stress, chronic pain, social isolation, and grief with meaningful, evidence-based interventions. She's also a certified dementia practitioner, coordinator of the FUMC Memory Ministry, providing support to people living with dementia and their families by connecting family, friends, and faith. So, Vicki, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. I want to thank all the staff and all the presenters that have been involved in the Institute the last few days. It's really been nice, and I've been able to catch some really good sessions. And I want to thank Dan for the opportunity. I just kind of found him random. He was willing enough to take me on and let me appear tonight. So I appreciate that. And I also want to thank all of you that are attending this evening session. And I hope that you'll be able to take something out of the workshop that you can use in your personal and also your professional life. So I invite you to, if you have the capacity to use your camera, please do. It would be nice. It'd be fun if you're willing. But this is a session during dinner time. So if you have some snacks or libations or whatever, feel free to bring and enjoy. But some of you can tell from my smile that I'm not from Pennsylvania. And some of you may have heard that I live in Florida, but I'm not actually Florida. I'm from the foothills of the Smoky Mountains in East Tennessee. I grew up about 45 minutes from the Appalachia Trail. And so one of my superpowers is probably being Southern. We enjoy tea and our sugar. We fry everything we eat, and country music rocks. So let's get started. Superpower times. The objectives, of course, is we will look at 3 of your personal strengths. We will identify one of your unique genetic or innate talents or gifts that you have that's only unique to yourself. And then we're going to look at strategies for embracing hope. How are we going to manage some difficult times? And there are some difficult times going on in the world right now. So what makes something difficult? Something difficult can be a problem or action that interrupts and disrupts something from happening. So this, of course, can affect our mood, our health, our overall well-being, and our quality of life. And lately in the world, we seem to just be going from one crisis to the next. We've got, of course, the global pandemic, COVID fatigue, quarantine fatigue, political and social disasters, natural disasters, fires and floods, and even environmental catastrophes. In California, they had that oil spill just this week. And of course, financial hardships. It also can be defined as an obstacle or a barrier you must remove or go around in order to go forward. So these can be health issues, a job loss, added responsibility, lost their job in your organization, compassion fatigue. I know so many people in healthcare right now are just, the frontline workers are just on edge, and many of you, I'm sure, are doing frontline. Unfortunately, I'm in a facility right now, but my heart goes out to everyone that's working double duty. And of course, added family responsibilities. Some of you may have been homeschooling and working from home. You're not used to working from home, so you have more free time or you have less free time. And of course, the social distancing and the isolation. So all of these make things difficult for us right now. And it's also a problem or a situation that prevents us from achieving something. And so this might be something such as unable to travel to, we had to put off my sister's funeral, for instance. We've still not had a memorial for her. And it can be, it can rob you of just motivation to want to do anything. And some people just didn't graduate on time. I spoke this past week at Florida Southern College. We used their exercise science students to help with some exercise programs and balance programs for a memory ministry that I'm running. And so I spoke at her chronic disease class on dementia. And she is just, her challenge of trying to do a hybrid class, and these students, they should have graduated. They came back, a lot of them came back to play sports they were given the opportunity to be able to come back and play, but now they're still in school, they're not working. And so that's been a really challenge for college students and new grads. So I'm gonna use and Dan, you might help me out if I don't see all the chats, but add something to the chat of, I know I covered a lot of things, but some of you may have something very specific that you want to share. I'm not asking you to talk about it necessarily, but just put it in so we have some ideas of some of the other challenges that people are experiencing now. Nobody chatting? Oh, there's one.
We have traffic from
Traffic?
Brittany. Moving, COVID deaths, very short-staffed. Isolation, I would say too,
They're actually on a lot of the death certificates they're attributing to seniors is COVID as a result of isolation or death due to isolation due to COVID.
Other comments include loss of volunteers, family care pulling staff on short notice, short staff, burnouts.
Yeah, or even Dan and I even talked about a loss of a pet, and that can be very difficult. So how can we handle these difficult times? They are challenging right now. So what better way? Call on the superheroes. So why do we love superheroes? Well, they inspire us. The research has shown that they inspire us to actually be a better person. And there was a study, it was a small study recently, but they had two groups of people, and one group of people were looking at images of superheroes flashing across the screen, and the other group was looking at just random images coming across the screen, a lawnmower, a backyard, an automobile, and they were in separate rooms. So the facilitator in each room, after they saw the images, they were kind of tidying up and saying that they had some tasks to complete at the end of this, if anybody was available. And which group do you think was more willing to help with these tasks? Of course, the ones that saw the superheroes, they were inspired to be helpful. They can remind us of our darkest time and just remind us of our greatest potential, and that strengths can encourage helpful behaviors, because superheroes stand for honor, integrity, and the belief that they can overcome adversities. And we believe that they'll make the world a better place. And you know, when I mentioned this in another session I was in, but when I got out of college, I had this vision of course, changing the world. And I was a little punk, 18 years old, and I came out of school ready with all these skills and excitement, and I failed in the very beginning. And the reason was I didn't have the 3 things that people needed, and in order to change the world. And one of them is you need other people to help in the effort. And now I think all of us as healthcare professionals, especially as recreation therapists, we're all working together to make some changes in the world. And the other thing you need are the skills that you develop along the way. And the last thing you need are your superpowers. So the Phantom was the first first superhero, and he came around 1939. And he showed up in a newspaper, and he's still in the comic strips as of today. And the amazing thing is the Phantom didn't even have superpowers. He had strength and intelligence, and he was a skilled fighter, but he got the image of being a hero because of the myth that he was immortal, and he could take action and fight the evil forces. So it's truly just a myth. So the Phantom was just a family man. He was an average guy, had a wife named Diane and 2 kids. Now, Spider-Woman, on the other hand, did have superpowers. And she had superhuman strength. She could lift up to 7 tons. She had endurance and speed. She was agile. She could climb walls. She was a master spy. And superhuman ability to smell. I guess that helped finding fires, I'm not sure. But she gained her superpowers from her mom when she was in the womb. Her mother was hit by radiation, and that's what gave her these powers. So you may be thinking, if only I had superpowers. How many are thinking that now? Are there any questions? You can ask questions along the way if you want to. Dan, you'll help me out with that. So we're going to look at what are your superpowers. So to start with, what is a superpower? And that is the gifts that you have that is unique to just you. And these are the uniqueness, personality traits of yourself that you developed when you were really a little kid. So you look at things other people told you. Your parents told you you were so manipulative, you were so slick. I was so curious. That was mine. We're just so curious. I was into everything. And this is what other people, the parents have told you, your coaches, your teachers. These are things that people tell you about yourself. And it's only unique to you. So it can sometimes be a combination of 2 or 3 things that really makes you unique. So who are you? You want to start asking people in your life, call your grandmother and find out, why was what made me so special? What made me more special than my sister? What was my uniqueness? So these are some things that you may be thinking about. So start jotting down, were you attentive? Were you grounded, calm? What were those strengths that you have as a little kid? And then you're going to start thinking, what do I still have? So jot down as we go, and you think of some of these unique gifts that you have. Now, the next thing you want to do is you're going to start reflecting on your life, but you're going to look first at your childhood. So how did you spend time as a child? What were you doing? Were you the outdoor kid? Were you the one hanging out in your room, making up games? Were you reading? I was down in the basement. I was inventing, exploring, taking things apart, and sometimes putting them back together. And I was making up games. So what were you doing? And what are some of the things you were doing then that you're passionate about as an adult now? The other thing that you want to think about when you were a child, how were you handling conflicts as a kid? Were you growing up in a household where your parents were fighting? And did you hide from all the yelling and screaming, or were you the placater and you came in and you wanted to solve it, make sure, and you were the fixer and make sure everything was okay? So think about that as a kid, and how does that impact you as an adult? And you want to start looking at your values. We in recreation therapy, we do value clarification a lot with our clients. And you want to really get in touch with, are you living your values? Is your actions throughout the day really showing what you value in life? I've always said with a to-do list, when you put things on your to-do list, you get the things done that you most value. So you may put down, I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to pick up my child from daycare. I'm going to go to the grocery store. Well, if you run out of time and you can only get one of those things done, which one do you do? I hope you've picked that child up from daycare, because that's the one you value the most. And again, ask your friends and family, what does make me unique? Don't be shy. And look at your experiences as an adult. We talk about flow. We talk about our own leisure activities. We talk about that. Are we living what we actually teach? So then you begin to start reflecting on your life, and you're going to start connecting the dots. So you may want to look back at, who have you admired in life? Has it been a grandparent? Has it been a celebrity? Was it your next door neighbor? Was it the coach in your life? And then look at, what were the qualities of that person? Why did you kind of hang on to that person and had that admiration for that particular person? And then start looking at life-changing events, those pivotal events, those pivotal moments when life could just shift you in a completely different direction. One of my life-changing was, I was working in alcohol and drug rehab and doing high adventure ropes course, rock climbing, and I got injured on the job and actually broke vertebrae in my neck. And so at that point, that was a pivotal moment. My life shifted, my life changed. I had to go, I loved TR, I wasn't going to leave that. So I had to go in a different direction. And so when I look back on that, at the time, it was devastating. But now I'm not sure I would have the joyful life that I have had that not happened, because I think I would have stayed in a rut and not been challenged, and to be able to venture out and become an entrepreneur and do everything. I'm doing everything I love to do now. And it was because of that one pivotal moment. But sometimes it might be the death of a parent, and that can be truly devastating. So look at those times in your life when things changed. Maybe you were at crossroads. This particular thing happened. You lost a job. What am I going to do? Am I just going to give up and take another job, or am I going to step out and really move forward. And then, of course, look at those patterns. Do you notice that you're doing things over and over again the same way? And how's that working for you? You know, one of the patterns that people sometimes do is they're unhappy, so they'll change jobs, or they'll change locations, or they'll move. And sometimes those are nothing more than geographical cures. Those are just, I'm leaving, you know, but the thing is, you take yourself with you when you're doing those things. So sometimes when those are happening, you got to kind of take a look at yourself and see if you're part of that particular pattern. And then, what is your life theme? So, you know, tap into the main idea and the underlying meaning in your life. And I guess mine would be creativity. That's kind of my theme throughout my life. It's just having to be creative. And by really figuring out what your theme is, this can help you to begin to live each day full of meaning and with less worry. So why are you here? What is your purpose? So you have this uniqueness about you. You have this character, this personality, but what are you doing with it? You know, are you really living life to the fullest? Are you taking those gifts and sharing those gifts and using those gifts in a passionate, happy way? So look at the paths. Look at the paths that have changed in your life. As I said, you may come to a crossroad. You know, what is your quest? What are you waiting on to finish the book? What is your quest to get things, to make things happen? You have projects at home. And that way you can just understand your journey. And when you find yourself drawn to certain activities, things that you've been called to do along the way, they may be important to you than you realize. And so taking notice, what really, you know, with passion, what really sets your heart on fire? I guess that's what we want to look at. Finding that passion. So this is a biggie for me. When I'm working with my clients, or when I'm giving workshops, or whatever I'm doing, what's motivated you to be here tonight? I mean, you had to show up at 5 o'clock to be here. And so the extrinsic motivation, of course, you're getting CEUs, and everybody wants CEUs. That's what people talk about, are they're going to be CEUs. But what's your intrinsic motivation to do things? And do you not allow yourself to do something if it's not, if it doesn't have some type of extrinsic reward? You know, if you're not getting credit for it at work, or you're not getting, you know, a trophy. And then you got to look at action versus passion, or active action versus passion. And if you're just thinking about all the time how you want to do things, then that's not passion. That's just not taking action. And as far as the passion, I sat in on a group or a session last night with Brittany and Gabby, and they talked about, they were very innovative, very organized, but they created a recreation therapy program when they didn't even have to. I mean, they could have gotten by with what they were doing, I think. But you could just tell in their presentation the passion they have, not just for TR, but for the people that they work for, or they work with. So they really demonstrated passion last night. So when you identify your passion, that's when you really look at, am I living my values? Am I truly living my values? And the thing is, you may not even be aware of the things that you're naturally good at doing. Sometimes it's not obvious to ourselves, or we are a little reluctant to really claim our fame. but it could be what you're really meant to be doing. I saw a clip just today. They asked a financial advisor, I'm 40 years old. I'm thinking about changing my job, but I really have a passion. Should I go with my passion or should I go with a job? And she said, I'm so unhappy in my job. And what do you think his advice was? Go with the job. You know, it doesn't mean you don't have to be happy. You know, you gotta make a living for your family. You gotta be stable, but you don't really have to be happy. I think that's pretty sad because there's an awful lot of people that are unhappy in their work, and that you spend a lot of time at work. So now we're going to look at, or you're going to look at, start jotting down the strength that you have and the weaknesses. Now in TR, you know, strength-based therapy, we don't really talk about the weaknesses our clients may have or encourage them to really look at the weaknesses. We want to look at the strengths. And so why do we do that? You know, why do we want people to try to identify strengths? Somebody tell me that. Why do we want our clients to identify strengths?
I think it's important for them to know what resources they have under their belt already without even speaking to us. We aren't part of the equation at this point. What they have, what has gotten them to the point where they're even here, so that not only can they understand what they can use later on, but they can also be proud of what they've already accomplished in their life.
Well said. That was really well said. So it gives them the hope, you know, that they're going to have some tools and they're going to have the strengths to improve their life, that they're going to have some control over what happens. It's not going to be us making the changes, but it's going to be them. Why else do we want to help identify strengths?
We can build on their strengths. Once we identify their strengths, we can do programming to build on their strengths and kind of make them even better.
Exactly. So knowing what you do well, and sometimes we have to kind of help them identify those strengths, but knowing what you do well, the studies show that in a work situation, if you're doing what you do well in your work, then you're happier. If you're not able to do what you do well at work, you're not likely to be happy. Now think about the positions that some of us are in. I mean, I'm hearing it in other areas in this profession. I'm not able to do what I need to do. I'm taking them out for a smoke break. I'm having to serve lunch. And you're doing things that those aren't your strengths. So how can you be happy if you're not able to do what you do best?
And when you get to focus on your strengths, I know for myself, I feel just more confident and just like you said, I'm doing my job and I'm doing it well and I'm using my strengths. It makes you feel good.
Exactly. It gives you that confidence. It makes you feel like you can even contribute. So I like for people to sit in their weakness, is the way I kind of put it. You know, it's important that you do understand the weakness, but you want to just feel it for a minute. And the reason is it just reminds you that you're not immortal. You're a regular person. You have challenges. You have things that you don't do as well. And then at that point, you can, it just reminds you that you're mortal and that you can find other people and connect with others to offset those weaknesses. You know, I'm sure when you work at, I'll talk about Britt and Gabby again, you know your strengths and you know weakness, for lack of a better word, but you play on each other. If one organizes a little bit better, if one's a little more energetic, or even particular day when you're just not up to par. You know, when I train camp counselors or teachers when they're working with kids, you know, sometimes you have to just lower your expectations for a day. When a child comes in and you can see this child is just having a really hard day, you know, you can't expect as much from a client or even from yourself when you're not really feeling up to par. So being able to know what your weaknesses are is really a strength, I think. You know, even the superheroes aren't perfect. You know, every superhero has a nemesis. And a lot of us, we have that just ongoing battle within us. But Aquaman, you know, the further away he is from water, the less strong he is. And the Green Hornet, his nemesis is the color yellow. So just be aware. Okay, so what's next? So we've been talking kind of how to find your superpowers. And this is kind of, I don't expect you to just know all this in this one hour session or whatever, but that you can build on this later. But what's next? And I have action plan here, and I'm going to tell a little story. When I was working in alcohol and drug rehab years and years ago, these poor kids, I worked on an adolescent unit. And I think it was Sharon. No, who was it? Maybe it was the session yesterday, Britt. You were talking about the average stay for rehab, or was that in another session?
Yes, that was ours.
And it's like almost nothing. and A&D has gotten, I mean, when I worked in the 80s, this was an inpatient hospital setting where they contracted out with a company that provided the A&D treatment. And then the staff, the recreation therapist and the other therapists, we were contracted by another company. So we came together and worked on a unit, and these kids could get 90 days easy. I mean, it was just like 90 days off the bat, the insurance would cover it. And then they could apply 30 more days at a time. And it's not an ideal situation to be in the hospital setting that long, but we went outside. There was, you know, but the length of stay is ridiculous now. I think they send them to the emergency room and then send them on their way, maybe with the resource. But anyway, so when I'm working with these adolescents, they work so hard, you know, for 120 days, work so hard learning about recovery. And then at the end, they met with their caseworker and they started writing a disaster plan. And that's actually what it was called. This was like their personal discharge plan, but they called it a disaster plan. So it's like, these are the things to do when these disasters happen. So they were just setting these kids up. I mean, that just always went through me. So I've always used action plan. You know, use a care plan, but you take action. You don't wait for the disasters to happen. So what are we really talking about with all this when we're putting ourselves out there and we're trying to do a self-assessment? You know, we're taking risk. We're looking at ourselves. And this basically, finding your superpowers, is basically about personal growth. That's what this is. You know, you're looking at your boundaries, you're exploring your strength, your values, and then you're looking at, you know, how do you deal with stress? How do you honestly deal with stress? And so you look at your current level of coping tools, and are you willing to take a risk and add more coping skills in your toolbox of coping skills? You know, are you willing to add more things? Are you willing to learn mindfulness? Are you willing to take a class? Are you willing to make these changes? Because a lot of, you know, sometimes we'll get a client, they'll come in and they want all this help. And so you start setting up and start even doing some problem solving, and they really don't want to change. They just want to vent. They just want to tell you how miserable they are. So you're also looking at new challenges. Some of you may be interviewing for a new job, and you haven't interviewed in 20 years, but it's now, look, this isn't working for me. I've got to try something different. The other thing is, especially we've had a lot of deaths, either COVID deaths or just deaths in general. But as the holidays are coming up, and this is something I'm already talking to a lot of my groups about the holidays, because traditions holidays are all about traditions. And traditions change when a prominent family member is no longer at the table. And so many times families don't even think about preparing for that. They just, oh, well, where are we going to have it? And that happened when my mom died. She was the matriarch, and we always had Christmas at my mom's, and my sisters would come. And then when she passed away, we just fumbled. I mean, we fumbled for years. We could not figure out a new tradition. We tried going to the mountains, and it was difficult. And so during this difficult time and the holidays coming up, don't get caught off guard if that's going to be an issue. If you've lost a family member and things are, or you have a new family, maybe you've married, and now all of a sudden now you're going to have to split your time. You're going to have to go to the outlaws and the in-laws and your parents. So think about, it's not too early to start thinking about the changes that COVID has caused over this past year, or the challenges and difficulties that you have right now, and how are they going to affect your holiday? Because traditions can be, you know, I have new traditions now and I love them. It just took me a while to figure them out. So is anybody familiar with this model, the comfort, stretch, panic zone model? Okay. It's been done in many different ways. This happens to be Carl Rong's model, but it was actually based on the Yerkes-Dodson law. And it's talking, it really wasn't a law, it was more of just a psychological concept. But it talks about peak performance happens when people experience a moderate amount of pressure. So you think about a deadline. You know, you could work toward a deadline. You know it's coming. You're going to have to stay up late to get something done. So sometimes people work a little bit better under a little bit of pressure. But I use this model a lot when I'm starting to work with new people. I'm in private practice. I do recreation therapy sessions and groups and leisure coaching. But this kind of gives me an idea of how willing are they to really change. And so when you look at the comfort zone, we all have a comfort zone, and many of us may be in our comfort zone at home right now. You may not be as comfortable because you're learning, so you're really kind of in the stretch zone. But the comfort zone is where you're kicked back, you're comfortable, you know, you're sitting watching TV in your underwear, life is good. No pressure, everything's good. Then at the opposite end down there, you have the panic zone. Now, the panic zone is when, okay, all of a sudden someone's knocked on the door, you're in your underwear, and it's your new mother-in-law. So you're in a panic and you've got to make some choices. You've got to make some good decisions. So do you turn the lights out and pretend you're not there? Or do you come up with some coping strategies and deal with it? But the panic zone is those times in your life where you're really pushed to the limit. You're being asked by your boss to do a presentation, and you don't want to do the presentation, but your boss is really pushing you. So being in the panic zone is that time where it really creates a great amount of stress. It's overwhelming. It can be fear, and learning is just impossible. When you're panicked, you cannot learn. And then the middle zone is the stretch zone, or the learning zone. And that's the optimal zone we want to be in. Not when we're in the evening and we're watching our TV in our comfort zone, but right now, tonight, all of us are in a stretch zone. You're comfortable, you're not panicked, but you're allowing yourself to kind of stretch yourself a little bit, bring in new information, and do a little learning. And so that's where you want people to be, but sometimes you have to push them into the panic zone in order to discover ways to deal and cope with panic. So I talk about self-esteem. I do a lot of trainings for summer camps and early childhood intervention programs. I do a workshop on creating cooperative kids. And this is working with kids who have really challenging behaviors. And part of my, one of my superpowers, I guess, is being able to be a very effective detective when helping people identify behaviors that are troubling. And whether you're working with people with dementia, as you know, and they're wandering or they're screaming, all behaviors are an unmet need. So anytime a behavior is happening, and this can be if you're checking out at the grocery store and all of a sudden that clerk just, becomes really rude to you, there's an unmet need. She may not be getting affirmation at work. She may have been told she had to work late, but any behavior is an unmet need. And so when you're building self-esteem, I use this example when I'm helping these counselors work with kids with challenging behaviors, because these are the kids that get kicked out of the parks and recreation departments. And these are the kids, no, Dan, don't take this personal, but they do. And these are the kids that need it the most. And so being able to have inclusion services to help these kids develop their own strategies and their own coping skills to deal with stress, and then teaching the counselors how to interact and understand the unmet need that the child has is key in working with anybody. But when building self-esteem, I show this example when I teach. I'm also a certified parent educator, so I do a lot of parenting classes. So I ask the families, what builds self-esteem? Who can tell me? Go ahead. Get yourself out. Get in your panic zone. Get your stretch zone. What builds self-esteem?
Finding success with certain tasks.
Good way to put that. So this little guy, he's tying a shoe. So here he is, 3-4 years old, and he's learning to tie a shoe. Now, I would imagine each of you can tie shoes. You can tie your own shoe. And when you learn to tie your shoe, you were pretty excited. I'm sure you hopped up, you ran into the kitchen, Mommy, I tied my shoe. Daddy, call grandma. I tied my shoe. Well, this morning when you woke up and you tied your sneakers, I bet you didn't have any inkling to call grandma or your mom and remind her you tied your shoe again. Because self-esteem happens when you do something hard. And so I use this when I'm working with counselors, because so often, and even with parents, they want to rescue the kids. They don't want them to have to struggle in the least. But when you grab the kid, he's trying to tie a shoe, and you say, here, just let me do it. I can do it faster. And you tie the shoe. How does that affect that child's self-esteem versus when that child does successfully tie his shoe? So I really like this explanation. Doing the difficult things that you've never done awakens the talents you never knew you had. So we go back to our model. What's different in this picture? Can you see a difference? Our comfort zone's much bigger and our panic zone's getting smaller. So the whole idea is, when you learn coping skills, when you learn to deal with those stressors, when you learn to deal with the things that really put you in the panic zone, you'll create more comfort zones and less an area in your life where you're constantly concerned or worried. Does that make sense to you, how that will work?
Vicki, do you have any suggestions, or maybe you're going to get to this later, on how to keep yourself in the stretch zone and how to stay motivated to keep learning so you don't always stay in your comfort zone?
We'll cover that, I think, in some of the strategies when we talk about, what do you do now that you have your superpowers? How are you going to deal with this difficult situations? But if it doesn't, then I can address a very specific question if you haven't. So basically, when growth happens, you have new experiences. When you go to I worked with a little boy with autism years ago, and with all the sensory, I worked on a ABA team as an ABA therapist. And I did that for about 4 years. And then I discovered floor time therapy. I don't know if any of you know that, but floor time therapy is much more like recreation therapy. So I quit doing the ABA because I didn't like it. But this little boy had autism. He's 4 years old. And there was a grocery store. It was a little Walgreens that was right near mom's house. And she needed to run in there, you know, on the way home from school and pick up milk. And, you know, it was just handy. She needed to be able to use that store. But poor little John, he could not tolerate that store. I mean, the sensory, the noise, the sounds, the smells, he would have a meltdown every time he would go in there. But the therapy team, that was our challenge. And so that was one of my goals, was do the community part. And so I was going to transition him and help him desensitize to all the stimulation in that Walgreens so he could be in there successfully. So this was probably a good 4 months. Every afternoon, you know, kids in ABA, they work full time. They're like 40 hours a week. It's just unbelievable. That's another story. But I took John every afternoon. We'd go to the store. We walked. It was close enough. And he was so sweet. We walked down the sidewalk, and when he needed to turn, he'd just say, way. And we'd go that way, way. So he knew exactly where he was going. But the minute he saw that parking lot, he'd have a meltdown. He would start screaming. So I started bringing some toys. We started playing in the parking lot, different kinds of strategies. I used music, storytelling, and he got to where he could come into the store, but the lights, he'd start screaming. So we went, it was one of those in and out doors really quick. So we'd go in and out, in and out. So we did that for a full week. So he finally got where we could walk back into the store, and he finally got to where he could tolerate it. And of course, being a therapist, it didn't embarrass me if he had a meltdown, whereas mom, it was horrible. It was a horrible experience. But nonetheless, John got the point now where he'd been through the panic zone and he's having new experiences. So it was time for us to go shopping. So his mom gave him a $5 bill and a tube of toothpaste, empty toothpaste. And so we were going to the store to buy some toothpaste. So off we go. We get in the store, and John was doing really well. And I don't know if you've worked much with people with autism. They had since, and I'm really doing some research now on autism and Alzheimer's, so the similarities. But anyway, he had a wonderful memory. He knew where everything was. We'd been in the store enough, and we were counting, and we were playing games. He went right through the toothpaste. He knew exactly where it was. So he gets his tube of toothpaste. He comes up, and he and I walk to the counter. So there we are standing in line. And John was a busy little boy, and he was touching, you know, all the things in the impulse aisle. He was touching the candy, but he wasn't taking it. He would take his one finger and just touch. He was kind of babbling a little bit, but being very appropriate. I mean, he wasn't causing any problems, but it was noticeable, I'm sure, to other people. But I just stood there with John, and here we go. We move further up in the line as the next person goes. And I noticed that behind me, a woman shows up, and she's got a little boy about the same age as John. And so I just kind of glanced at her, and so she gave me the eye. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been a parent and you've had a child misbehaving, but you get the evil eye from strangers. And it's like, you know, she was looking at me like, lady, why can you not control your son? Look at him. He's touching everything. Why is he blabbering? So I saw that. And so I looked. And so John, his superpower, believe it or not, was to teach people about autism. His mother made that really clear from the beginning. You let John teach anybody about autism in any way he can. So by golly, John's superpowers were coming out. So I turned to the woman and I said, gosh, I said, it must really be hard to stand in line when you're 4 years old. And I mean, she was just taken back. She was not expecting a conversation. And you know how sometimes you'll take a kid and you'll kind of like grab them in the middle of the back and like cram them up against your thigh, like, you know, this is my kid, I'm saving my kid. She like grabbed her kid like I was going to do something to him. And I said, well, you know, John has had a lot of difficulty coming in the store because of all the sounds and things. I said, John has autism. And so she just froze. And I said, do you know much about autism? And I was being my nice Southern self. And she said, well, no, I don't. And she's really cold. No, I don't. well, here was my chance. And I said, well, autism really affects communication. And for John, it's the sensory things. I said, these sounds and these noises sound a whole lot bigger than they are. And I went through my little explanation, and we're moving up in the line, and we get up. And so I did my little blurb, and she relaxed. I mean, she let go of her kid, and she started relaxing. And she said, well, you know, she said, I've heard of it, but she said, I never really knew anything about it. Now, she didn't thank me, but she did admit that, and I could tell from her body language that this was a stretch zone. I put her in the panic zone, then I put her in the stretch zone, and now she's back in her comfort zone because I'm not talking to her anymore. So John pays for, he pulls out his little $5 bill, he pays for his toothpaste, he's still babbling, touching things, and we walk out of the store. So John and I have a ways to walk, so we walk through the parking lot and up on the sidewalk, and I happen to turn and I see the woman coming out of the store, and she had that little 4-year-old boy in her arms. She wasn't walking with him, she had picked him up, and she was holding to him so tight. I mean, you could almost see the little angel wings pop out of his back. And I think in that moment, a paradigm shift happened for that lady, that she got information that she had never had before, and something that she believed became something different. So that's an example of how you can work through the comfort zones and the panic zones and having new experiences. But being in more comfort zone modes, then the stress is much more manageable for us. And you learn more coping skills. And so you can deal with, because it does seem like things are happening more and more, and it feels just overwhelming sometimes. Okay, so now we're going to make our own superhero. My fool blew away. Excuse me just a minute, I'm gonna have to go reach down here and get it, sorry. Okay, I apologize. Okay, so if you have your foil, put it up in front of you. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to take your aluminum foil, and you're going to hold it in the middle, right there at the top. Just hold it in the middle. And this is a great activity. You can do these with your own clients. I have done this with people living with dementia. I've done it with about every group I've ever worked with. So there you have it. Now what you want to do is you're going to make a tear, and you're going to tear it about 3-4 inches. Just a nice little tear. Now with the aluminum foil, you know, you can't make a boo-boo. If you tear it, just re-tear it. So actually what you're doing is you're making legs. So these are 2 legs. Okay, got it? So if you turn it over, completely over, okay, now you have the 2 legs. Okay. Now you want to grab the middle again at the top. And this time you want to grab the middle of one side. So now you're going to tear there. And so we're going to make arms. You tear a little bit for arms. Grab the middle again. Go back to the other side of the middle. Got it? Anybody confused? And you're going to tear it again. So look at that little guy. So you've got arms, a head, and some legs. Got it? All right, now, this is a real clinical term. I know some of you have been in clinical, so you'll have to remember this clinical term. So now what you're going to do is you're going to squish. So you can start like at the waist, and you're going to start squishing. And make sure you leave the limbs out. You want to pull, don't get your limbs caught up in the squishing part, but you'll start squishing at the waist And then you pull out your limbs. And you can squish your limbs. And you can make them as tight as you want. You can leave them as loose as you want. Pull out all your limbs. And then you'll have a head. How you doing, Caitlin?
Slightly struggling, but okay.
No, you're smiling. I loved it. All right, so now you've got a little head. Okay, so it should look something like this. And if it doesn't, you know, when you teach art, you know, you teach somebody how to draw an apple. And when you get done, the picture looks like an apple. As you know, when you're doing expressive arts, it's the process, not the product. So it's the process of what we're doing. The product really doesn't matter. It's what you want the product to be. So you've got your little guy here switching around. I suggested 2 pieces of foil just in case. So the second piece of foil is strictly an extra piece. So if any of you want to make a second one or start over, please feel free. Okay, Dan, if you'll put us in some, we're going to break out into some smaller rooms. And I hope I can see people, but I'm going to pop in the rooms. And so what you're going to start doing with your superhero and in your groups, start identifying your superpowers. This is you. This is you as a superhero. What are your superpowers? So Dan, help me out.
I'm setting it up right now.
Okey-doke.
I wish my legs were this long in real life. Could be
All
a
right,
model.
people, we're gonna go into these rooms. Here we go. Okay, Vicky, I got you out of that room and I can send you to different rooms. Would you like that? You're muted, so I'm assuming you want to do that.
Oh yeah, sorry.
All right, so I'm gonna put you, where are you now? Move to room 1. You're going into room 1 now. 3, 2, 1, and they're all closing now. Where's Vicky? Vicky, you need to unmute.
That happens when I leave the room.
Hey,
Um,
and we can go back longer. I just had it only scheduled for like 4 minutes. So you,
Oh, no, that's okay. So, so I heard some really good discussions. One, somebody was wondering, is it, Kaylin, yay! Very good. The share was, I'm very dependable at work and my boss can always count on me, but I don't know if that's a good one or bad, you know. But these uniqueness parts of it is how do we harness it? How do we bring these things, you know, being dependable? How does that make you able to deal with difficult situations? How does that give you the gift to be able to do things that maybe other people can't be, because if you're perseverance or whatever it happens to be. Does anybody, now the little card, here's my little superhero. The little card was, you can tape your little superhero onto the card and you can just flip it up and you can name a particular, this one I put creativity because that's probably my biggest. I mean, even as a little kid, and I can make up a game. I can be in the grocery store and I am playing. So that's what the cards are for. You're more than welcome to do that. So does anybody else want to share their gifts? If not, if you're not on a video, that's okay, but share the gifts that you've learned about yourself.
So I learned that my gift is patience. I work with older adults, and I have the ability to just let them kind of just tell me what they want to tell me. I'm just really good at just sitting there and listening to what they have to say. I have a lot of my friends tell me that as well because they always vent to me. So I'm always there for somebody to be there to listen to.
That's good, and that'll serve you well. Anybody else?
I will share for a minute here. This is my creation. I think I remember as a kid, my dad used to call me Fiddle Fingers because I had to check out everything with my hands, you know, learn how to fix bikes, learn how to fix this, fix that. And that has always paid off for me. In the long run, I like to tinker with things and get old things working again. But it also makes me very organized because I remember how things get put together and how to put them back together. So Fiddle Fingers has led the organization.
That's good. And somebody just said that, oh, your hero has big arms. I bet he gives big hugs.
I was time for the big finger, the big fiddle finger. But yes,
that's right. That's good. So I mentioned I do this with different groups. I've done this with many different groups. I did it once with a group living with dementia, and one woman, I mean, she was making it. And the thing about people with dementia, their cognitive memory declines. They don't know facts and history, but their creativity is still there. They can pretend, they can do storytelling. It's amazing. And so she looked right at me and she had her little figure up there. And I said, well, what's your superpower, Virginia? She said, I live to be this old. And she's 97. So it works with lots of different populations. And one of the most painful, I guess, experience I had when I was doing this workshop, I was doing it with a group of, it was a pediatric support group. And these were for parents who had lost a child to childhood cancer. And so I was working with I did a grief group. I used drumming and did grief group with the parents, but I also worked with the siblings, and the siblings were anywhere from 10 to 17 years old. So we made our superpowers one night. And one girl, when she got finished, I asked if anybody wanted to share, and this is what she held up. And so I'm going, wow. I said, you want to tell us about your super power? She said, I'm invisible. And I said, can you tell me more about that? And she said, Yeah, she said, I just found out my brother's dying of cancer and my parents haven't told me. I heard them talking last night. And that was the most, I mean, after the group, I went out and I talked to the director and I said, do you know anything about, and I don't remember her name, a young girl? And she said, yeah, she said, he's gotten a diagnosis. They've known he's been sick. But I said, have they told her? And she said, no, and they don't plan on telling her for a while. And I said, I have news to share. You need to talk to her because she's alone and she's feeling left out. So using therapy, you can find out things like this. But anyway, okay, so we'll go back to my screen. Does it go, is it going to start where it left off? Dan? My screen? Oh, here we go. All right, so we built that. So now how do we activate these superpowers? We've got them now. What do we do with them? And maybe, Brittany, this will answer some of your questions. So building resilience. Resilience, when you think of resilience, it's the ability to cope with the loss and change of trauma that has been important in our lives, even in the most difficult times. So resilience can help you adapt better. It can help you with new events. It can help you during turbulent times. And people with resilience have shown to be more able to handle trauma and change or anything that goes on. So they have a higher tolerance of distress. And so how do you do that? You practice acceptance. And it's not, you cannot stay in denial about things that happen. It's just not healthy. And working with people who've gotten diagnoses of dementia and working with the families, the longer you stay in denial, you miss out on interventions. You miss out on a lot. And dealing with grief and the denial and grief, you have to move along to accept it in some way, because you can't resolve a problem if you don't really acknowledge it and accept that there is an issue there. So denial keeps you in pain, and that will prevent you from adapting to the new circumstances that you have. And you want to master your emotions. You know, can you self-regulate? We teach our children with autism how to self-regulate. How do you manage all those big emotions? How do you manage your big emotions? Are you aware of your thoughts? Are you really aware of your emotions and your feelings? And it's kind of like, do you have grit? And it's not grits. Grits are girls raised in the South. But do you have grit? Can you stay with it long enough? So that brings us to embrace hope. You don't. So what is embracing hope? When you think of that, embrace hope, what do you think of? Why do we need hope?
Keeps you moving forward.
Right. Being hopeful is not the same as the unrealistic expectations of being in denial. But embracing hope is embracing life, embracing the change and being fully engaged in your life, and being willing to take on the challenge. And some people use faith. They use the word faith, but you practice humility. Master those emotions again. Use your superpowers. You recognize and name your fears and channel your energy into a productive means. And beware of information overload. In these days, there's too much stuff being, you can get so bogged down with it. So I really caution you, monitor information right now. So I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to this. And I want to quote one of our best loved superheroes. It was Superman. That was Christopher Reeves. And he said, that once you choose hope, anything is possible. So perseverance, you got to do the work. You've got to be willing to do the work. You got to do the pain. You got to work through this. Minimal pity parties. It's okay. Throw yourself one occasionally, but you got to get out of it. And you got to be flexible. If you can't bend and move in this day and age, you're going to get stuck. And being stuck in inflexibility is really dangerous. And not only will you survive, you will revive. That you'll overcome and you will thrive. And always brace for the impact. You know, I live in Florida and we're in the height of hurricane season, and we have to embrace for impact. You know, we have to make the sandbags appear. We have to have the water, the generator's got to have. So it's not that something's bad going to happen necessarily, but you're on an airplane and they're starting to lose altitude. What do they tell you? You know, you get your oxygen map and they say brace for impact. They're not saying you're going to survive, but you do everything possible to be able to make the impact less harmful. And of course, take time for yourself. And we, healthcare providers, may be the worst to really take care of themselves. But writing is a wonderful activity, whether you write in a gratitude journal, and studies show people who show gratitude and keep it in a journal are happier people. And you got to stay active and enjoy the moment. I hope that people were able to stay in the moment during this 60 minutes or so, to be able to embrace and have the social needs met, and that your mind didn't wander too far away. I know it's easy to want to check your phone and do that, but trying to stay in the moment and just giving your intentional intention at times, and just find what makes you happy. So here's Flash. What does he say? There comes a time when you've got to stop running away from things and you've got to start running towards something. Even if your path isn't lit, trust that you'll find your way. Now, Dan had the flash behind him earlier. Where's the flash, Dan? Let me see him. Dan's on a search. There he is. There's the flash. Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
So my all-time favorite movie and book is The Wizard of Oz. And so Dorothy, here she was, an ordinary person just like us, and her superpower, she was able to go back home, and she was able to bring that imagination and that dream to come alive. And she used the superpower to find those inner strength, and she had it all along. The good witch just couldn't tell her about it. And she was capable of being brave when she needed to be, when she met all those challenges through the land of Oz. And being able to come to terms with her own powers enabled her to go home like she really wanted to. So in closing, use your superpowers to help others. Your superpowers are superheroes or everyday people who have mastered these powers and thus developed a more mental toughness, resilience, and self-confidence than the rest of the population. Superheroes are not just the characters on TV that wear the capes and fly through the night. Superheroes come in all shapes and sizes. Inside of every one of us is the making of a superhero. So when you discover your talents and your inner strengths that allow you to contribute your greatest gifts to the world and find the peace and power in your heart and soul, you are absolutely a superhero. Thank you. Any question? We have a few more minutes, Dan. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I would love to see some other people's superhero and hear about them, because I wasn't in those breakout rooms. So I don't know if anybody's brave enough to come forward and show their superhero.
Some share, but we'd certainly invite you to share more.
Well, I didn't make a superhero. I didn't have the tinfoil. Very sorry. But my superpower was creativity, just like yours, Vicky. Um, I used the description of I could look at an empty room and find kind of so many things to do with that. I can look like I, in the past, have looked at a closet full of what others would describe as trash or useless miscellaneous items, and I made a whole program based on them.
There you
Um,
go.
so I really see the thing that sometimes others miss, and follow-up superpower to that is um, recently I've learned the skills to implement it as well and do that like step by step. So those are my two.
Very good. Thank you very much. Anyone else?
I had mentioned in the chat resourcefulness. So there's my little resourceful dude. He doesn't have a cape though. Or she doesn't have a cape.
He
Maybe
is
he doesn't
you,
know.
Heather. He is you. He is she.
Is she? Gender neutral around here.
There you go. Anyone else? Well, I hope you picked up a couple of little pointers there that can help you get through some of these difficult times. As far as being able to stay in the stretch zone, is that what you're asking, Brittany? Is how do you stay in a stretch zone? Or how do you- everybody's zones are different. It doesn't take much. A friend of mine, it doesn't take much to put her in the panic zone over many other things. But having exposure to new experiences or having exposure to the things that make you panic can help you begin to understand and learn about where's the fear really coming from? What is that fear? And the more experiences you have, the smaller that panic zone will become. And the more willing, and I think it's about willingness more than anything, like I said, it's all about personal growth. How willing are you to really grow and use your uniqueness and give to the world and treat yourself kindly and are you willing to really be happy?
Nice.
I had wrote down here when you were talking about coming up with the action plan and how you've come across people who you can just tell they're not ready to make that change.
Mhm.
Is that, and you bring in that conversation, do you bring out that model with the stretch, comfort and panic to kind of walk them through that? Or what are some of the ways you can motivate people a little bit more? Because that's really tough. It's tough when people don't want to change.
Right. And you don't want to just give up on them. You don't want to just say, well, okay, maybe another therapist will work with you. But working through, that connectedness, I guess that's another one of my superpowers is just the ability to connect. Somebody else mentioned that they have the ability just to connect with people who really are unapproachable or unconnectable. And I really discovered that when I was working with children with autism, because they called me the autism whisperer for some reason. I was able to get in there and communicate. So I think building the trust, being able to truly connect with the person, and sometimes the process is just really slow because some people are just stuck in that mindset. That's where that inflexibility is dangerous. If you're not willing to be flexible, then change is going to be real difficult for you. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here.
Oh, I have my thank you. There we go. Thank you.
There you go.
I am super. I love it.
So today, the code phrase for today's session is I am super. So you want to take that down. Again, special thanks to Vicky. I'm so happy that we ended up meeting and you've become part of our TRVI. It's really a pleasure to have you. And I love the fact that you're participating in so many of our sessions this year. So, and I'm sure we'll get together a little more.
Well, thank you. Thank you so very, very much. I enjoyed
And
it.
if you wanted to get in touch with Vicky directly, it's vickypitt@icloud.com that you can reach her. Again, to get this NCTRC credit, it's 1.5 hours. Just go to that SurveyMonkey site. I'll try to put it in the chat box in a minute, but it's the same site you've been going to since the beginning of the conference. The code phrase is I am super. Again, at the end of the TRVI, we'll send you a summary of all your credits. And also, we're looking to post all the recorded sessions that following week and then make them available to everybody to participate again. Okay, if there aren't any further questions, again, I will put it in the, I'm going to stop my share. There we go.
Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you for your positive feedback. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Vicky, yes, thank you so much. This was a great presentation. I think it's a lot of what we all needed to hear through just a terrible couple of years. And I really loved it. And I feel like we should have you do more sessions because you have so much knowledge and you have done it all. Like, I was like, man, Vicky's my superhero. Like, she's my superhero. Like, I can't get over it. I want to be just like you when I grow up, Vicky.
Well, you can, if you're interested in doing other workshops. I mean, I do, I don't know if I can put a plug in here, Dan, but you can go to my website, myleisurecoach.com, and there's workshops. And the thing is, you know, I talk about the intrinsic, extrinsic reward. My workshops are not for CEUs. I just won't do it. I mean, I did it here because of the conference, but you got to want to be in the workshop, and you got to want to be there because you want to be there. So there's a lot of fun, different workshops for personal growth on dementia and all kinds of things. But again, don't expect CEUs from me. I know that sounds horrible, but there's lots of people out there doing great services and great workshops for CEUs. But these workshops are fun and just that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Thank you, Dan.
And you know, people are coming because because that extrinsic motivation isn't there. They're coming to make themselves better. You're definitely right. And I have to laugh. My friend Amanda in the chat, she said this resonated with me, a lot to think about. And I had messaged her during this. She's just, sorry, Amanda, I'm sharing your life, but she's like moving across the state, looking at different jobs, going through all of these life changes. I was like, Amanda, she's like talking directly to you.
Well, I was telling Dan, I do one on, you know, there's a lot of people. I was telling Dan, in Pennsylvania, you've had like 100 people since October. I mean, since February that didn't renew their CTRS. They're not renewing them. They're going places. And so a workshop just on entrepreneurship, not on how to start a business. You can find out how to write a business plan from somebody else. But is the entrepreneurial spirit in you, and can you do more with your life? Well, you've got this wonderful career and you've got all these talents, but why can't you go beyond that? You know, use the talents and skills and don't get locked in. That inflexibility, I say, is dangerous. You've got to think outside that box, as corny as that sounds. But
yeah, we love that. And we like to see all the different ways that we can be using our skills. And I think you're an example of that.
Somebody must be home.
Oh. And I think there's another session later, Vicky, if you're going to continue. I'm assuming you're going to be on the later sessions. Her name is escaping me. I know it off the top of my head. It's been a long day. But she started her own, from a blog, she started her own business and does it on the side and runs this beautiful website. And when I was talking with her to get her to present for us, I left and I was like, wow, I just like want to go out and start businesses left and right now. Like, it's so inspiring to hear people in the field just doing big things and bringing RT services to the masses. And I just love it.
Yeah, that's Catherine Darkangelis, right?
Yes, Catherine. That's it. She's awesome
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, we still have a great lineup coming up.
Yeah.
We had Chalet present at our annual conference at PRPS, and her story about her journey with her kids was just inspiring and eye-opening at the same time. And I know it's about children, but there was a lot of application to anyone who is, suffering from some kind of, I'm sorry, I'll probably use incorrect words, but has special needs.
Living with special.
Living-
There you go.
Yes, thank you. The crossover that you could make from anyone, it's well worth the look. She was a wonderful presentation, so I'm really pumping that up, and we have some great presentations. So I hope to see you all tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Vicki. Thank you everyone for getting